This is the Mobile Marketing Minute with your hosts, Rob Woodbridge and Greg Hickman.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Mobile Marketing Minute or Moment. My name is Rob Woodbridge from Untethered.tv.
And I am Greg Hickman with MobileMixed.com.
Greg, something landed yesterday, just yesterday. If you're watching this on Thursday, the day that we release this, just yesterday, a small operating system update. iOS 8 came out, and we are here to demystify and enlighten from a marketing perspective what this means for you to get your word out through these devices or through this operating system. Man, it was a big one, though. This was like one of the most monumental releases ever.
It was kind of exciting. And I am an Android user, so that means a lot.
That's so great. Did it convince you to convert? Did any of these devices that they came out convince you to convert? Is their marketing effective?
No, I'm not convinced yet.
Oh.
I mean, my fiance is going to be getting one, so that'll be like my test. I need to hold it. I'm not a big fan of the whole like pre-order, not hold on to it or anything kind of guy. So, yeah, I mean, they finally are starting to catch up to all the things that Android's been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's nice to finally see them come around on that.
They validate it, right? And maybe other guys validate it, and then Apple brings it to mainstream.
I'm not blaming them for it. I'm just saying it's like it doesn't, as an Android user now, it doesn't make me want to jump just because now they're doing it, you know.
So Justin Timberlake and Jimmy Fallon, that's right. Justin Timberlake and Jimmy Fallon doing a commercial. It doesn't really incite you to go out and buy right away? Come on.
I do love both of those guys, though. I do love them.
JT and JF. So we're going to talk about some of the features that are baked into the operating system that from a marketing standpoint you should know about. These are things that are going to help you get your brand out in front of more people, or else actually keep your brand prominent in front of your existing customers. Do you want to kick it off? Feature number one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have. Why don't we list the things that we want to talk about, and I'm sure there's going to be overlap. So I have 4.
Go ahead.
One is the notifications, which sort of parlays into the push action buttons, which everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
I put on my list, I'm not sure if this counts because it's part of iOS, but it's also part of the phone, Apple Pay.
Yep. That's kind of big.
And the last one is, the last one is the no more MAC address.
So no more tracking, right? This could be pretty big for
marketers. Is there other things there that you have?
I brought in this concept because there's a lot of location tie-in to the operating system. So Spotlight, remember the useless search engine? If you are an iOS user and you've used Spotlight, it's been disappointing. Spotlight is a big thing for me, and also widgets. So we'll talk about widgets. So I think that those are 6 things.
I wrote that, but. Yeah, widgets, definitely.
Widgets.
As an Android user, that excited me.
Yes, because they caught up with Android, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's dive in. Where do you want to dive in?
Let's start right away. Why don't we tackle Apple Pay? Like, let's just say let's get Apple Pay out of the way, all right? Because it's the big behemoth, I think, in this.
So the thing I love about Apple Pay is that, I don't know, a year and a half ago, on an episode that I did with a co-host on my show, I basically said that there's no reason that Apple should ever put NFC in their phone because of iBeacon, because they had released their whole patent on iBeacon and all this stuff, and the fact that they have, I don't know, depending on who you talk to, 500 to 800 million credit cards on file, you can actually basically just create a transactional portal through email address, which blows, I think, contactless payments out of the water, personally. But they combined the two, so I thought that was really impressive. And, they will be, because of Apple doing this, they will potentially bring NFC into full adoption. We'll see. The disappointment, though, is that which I think it will eventually, is that it doesn't track purchasing data.
Right. It's
So
anonymous.
For all of the marketers out there, businesses and stuff that were like, oh, I can't wait to like know exactly what people are buying. It doesn't do that. And I actually have the senior VP of Apple, Eddie Q, said that will not be collecting information on what people purchased using Apple Pay, where they bought it, or how much they spent. The transaction is from you and your bank.
Business, Charlie, is based on selling these. Our business is not based on having information about you. You're not our product. Our product are these, and this watch, and Macs, and so forth. And so we run a very different company. I think everyone has to ask, how do companies make their money? Follow the money. And if they're making money mainly by collecting gobs of personal data, I think you have a right to be worried, and you should really understand what's happening to that data. And the companies, I think, should be very transparent about it. From our point of view, you can see what we're doing on the credit card thing. We don't want it. We're not in that business. I'm offended by lots of it. And so, you know, I think people have a right to privacy. So I think that's going to be a very key topic over the next year or so. And we'll reach higher and higher levels of urgency as more and more incidents happen.
So I do think that's important now, though, that they do that, because like they need to get consumers on board. And there's, with all the privacy breaches recently, like they don't want to be a part of that. So I think that's something that they're slowly over the next few years will get to. They just want to get everyone adopted to it first, and then it'll be like a field day for marketers. So sit tight.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on, sit tight. It's coming. But yeah, the enabling of those 500 to 800 million credit cards on file is going to be massive. And then tied to this iBeacon technology, I think just creates a more customer-friendly experience of when you walk in, you know, tied with Passbook, the card comes out and you know which ones you use. It's really simple. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
It's Passbook for me. It's that integration. Finally, there's a use and a need for Passbook. I use it on, you know, Starbucks and some some tickets for airplanes or airlines, and also for my grocery store loyalty card. But now they have a central spot that's really easy to get into for you know, for companies to manage loyalty, manage payments, all from one spot inside of Passbook. So no longer do you need an app to be a part of this ecosystem. Right. And I think that is huge from a marketing standpoint.
Yes. Well, iBeacon, you need an app.
You do, but it needs to be enabled. But
but the Apple Pay part, you do not need an app.
No.
Do you think it's interesting that Best Buy, Walmart, and was it Target?
Yeah, doing soft card.
That aren't adopting it?
What is it? It's Currency. Currency is their
Currency.
They I think it's odd. I think it's weird. I think it will last all of maybe months before they start to accept start to accept Apple Pay. I think that they're going to be forced to. A year, right? Yeah, well,
a year.
It is odd, but especially with the clout that Apple has. But they understand that this is a winner take all game right now, and Apple's in the driver's seat with that kind of clout. So, but it is huge. So, yeah. It is huge from a marketing standpoint. But what I like about just Passbook is the contextual awareness. So when you walk into a location, it can bring up the cards that you need, or the context with which you're going to pay, or your loyalty payment. And I think that is one of the big things for Apple Pay. There's much more to talk about with Apple Pay. It's going to be, but we'll reserve judgment. I was one of the guys who also said, you know, NFC, there's no way. Why would they ever do that? They got low energy Bluetooth. They got their beacon technology. But I think it's because of China, right? I think it's pervasive over there. So, all right. So Apple Pay, there's much more to talk about that, but we're trying to condense it down to the big pieces right here. So huge. What about here? I'll take a stab here at Spotlight, which is something that everybody uses.
I didn't read too much about that yet, so enlighten me.
So at the right now, Spotlight, when you look at the your screen and you scroll down where the icons are, and if you pull down, you get this little search bar at the top. And it was supposed to allow you to search pretty much everything on the device, in your email, maybe even websites. You could go out and search the web. But what they've done with some location services now, when they're turned on, is actually added context. So they've added location to that. So if I pull down and I start looking for typing up restaurant names, it'll go out to the web and it'll pull up information, much like Siri does, which I think ties into this. It'll pull up contextual information for restaurants that are nearby. And I think that this is one of those absolute gems that is going to start to disintermediate the web and search portals as a result of this, because they're going out there collecting the information that they need, and it could be based on your preference, your background, your history. It could be based on what's in your passbook. It could be based on a whole bunch of things, the apps that are in your on your device. But they're going to come up with relevant businesses that are nearby to you, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah. So from the screen. Yeah. So cool. I don't know how you optimize for that, but the same way that Siri does it, when you type in Siri, find me a restaurant, it just goes out and pulls that information up. So you've got to be aware, you've got to be there if you are that hyper local a business at that point. So Spotlight's interesting. Spotlight's very interesting to me. Very cool.
I like it.
All right, next.
The MAC address I think is interesting.
Yeah. So explain that.
Yeah. So typically devices are tracked down to a MAC address, and it's a number that doesn't change. It's tied unique to every device, and that is a huge part of, and was going to be a huge piece of the puzzle when it came to tracking devices accurately, kind of, and providing the appropriate attribution to the right device within this transactional experience, right? So like they get a message on their phone, they walk into the store, and then they buy with their phone or they buy with their card. How do you know that was all the same person, the same device? Leveraging the MAC address definitely was supposed to be a catalyst for that, or could have been. So what they're doing now, and kind of I had to write this down a little bit. So basically how I interpret it was that if iOS 8 devices broadcast their Wi-Fi probe requests, like when you're on Wi-Fi, like it's looking for this thing, but it's constantly changing the MAC address. So it's like shifting it to a unique MAC address. Obviously, tracking these devices across and throughout stores or any other venue for that matter is going to pretty much become impossible. What's the interesting part about it, though, is that iBeacon then kind of comes in, right? So iBeacon uses something completely different, which is low energy Bluetooth to enable, iBeacon to our apps. So you could now, iBeacon doesn't have the same exact quote unquote goal as a MAC address, but iBeacon transmitters, for example, again, don't receive data, but when coupled with iBeacon aware apps that can watch a device's position, just as many privacy invasive other things can do, that's where you can start to make educated guesses on the behaviors that this person might be taking. So I think it sucks in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's all, again, Apple self-serving themselves to really get people to incorporate iBeacon into the apps so that then they can get this data. So for the next 2 or so years where we can't track this stuff, where we don't know what Apple Pay is buying, we're going to have to rely on incorporating iBeacon into our apps to really kind of be the enabler of that, which obviously is going to be a win for Apple. So again, I see that all makes sense. It's a interesting chess move, power move, so to speak. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting that they went that route.
So do I. They're not dumb. They're doing this for an absolute reason, right? So
100%. Yeah.
We can see at some point an attribution product coming out of them at some point that showcases this. They're interested in this data. They must be, but for privacy right now, they're not willing to do that yet.
One of the articles I read mentioned Apple Register.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
No.
I didn't. Oh, I didn't. So apparently, it's like obviously a point of sale software that I'm sure that's gonna be another huge push, like knocking Square out of the market potentially, which will be interesting. So.
There's a lot going on there. I mean, Apple plays in this
is.
ecosystem, and you can see it. Like, it seems kludgy at beginning, but when they put it all together, it's like how did they construct this Megatron based on little nuts and bolts, and all of a sudden it's like crushing everybody else. It's weird.
Yeah, it's like once you incorporate iBeacon and you have all this stuff, it's like then I'm sure there's some sort of easy transition into like the iAd and like their whole advertising network and. No, so it's just like one feeds the other.
And I often think, are they building business, or are they just protecting, right? Because these could be billion-dollar businesses, but like $1 billion businesses, and but when you've got 170 billion in the bank and you're doing 30 to 40 billion in profit per quarter, like you're talking about an insignificant business. Like iTunes is not significant to them, but from a loyalty and a central spot and the enabling them to get 800 million credit cards, it's the reason for their business. Like it's Anyway, I like the strategy. Apple is a very unique company. All right, the other thing that came to my attention was this concept of widgets, and there's two pieces to this because there is a contextual aware component to a lock screen, and then there's your widgets, which is what from Android, right? Where you can. So let me start with I'll start with the contextual side. You can talk about the widgets, but the contextual side. When they announced iOS 8, they talked about this really great feature, which was app discovery. Now, this might sound stupid, and it might not be something, you might not think that this is marketing, but if you think about it for a second, loyalty happens from a consumer standpoint when you go to a store many times, right? And then once you are comfortable with that store, you're no longer, say, browsing their website for information. We talk about that often, Greg and I do, about the fact that when you become loyal, you would most likely download an app, right? So instead of just browsing the website, you will download the Macy's app, for example, because you are a loyal customer to Macy's, right? Up here in Canada, I've got President's Choice, Loblaws. I've downloaded the Loblaws app because that's where I go every week for my groceries, right? That's how loyal I am. So now, but discovery from apps is a very difficult thing, and especially if your business trying to usurp or take over business from, say, Loblaws, people aren't going to download your app. So what they've got this is contextual aware app notification. So when I walk into a store that is a partner with Apple right now, it's not available for everybody, but they said it would be, is that say I walk into a grocery store, a big chain, I go into a restaurant or an Applebee's or something like that, and it's in partnership with Apple, what ends up happening is that when I walk in and I look at my lock screen on my device, it shows this little gleaming little thing that says app available, and it's the Applebee's app. And I can click on that and automatically download that application in context to the place that I am. So this is another marketing vehicle simply put on the lock screen that is very contextually aware, that will help your customers discover that you have an app to be able to download. It's much better than going to a website and having, hey, download our app at the top, right? It's limited rollout. I haven't seen anything like it yet, but this is a feature that is going to be coming to the lock screen of iOS 8, which is fascinating.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
So I actually have an episode of my show coming up soon that it's not live yet, but I read this study, which this kind of relates to it, in that 46% of it was like something like 46% of shoppers are less likely to search for competing offers when they're within your own app.
Right. That's huge.
So, which is huge. So, I mean, like if you can create a good enough app that keeps people engaged and creates loyalty, you eliminate a lot of the chances for that customer to actually go out and seek something better.
Right.
Which is pretty interesting.
Significant. I like the idea of kind of, I don't know, temporal or temporary apps, right? So maybe I don't have to download the Applebee's app or the Macy's app, but when I'm in the store, that thing, basically beacon shines on the screen and I click on it and it gives me the app experience while I'm in there, but I don't have to download it. So it gives me a little bit of loyalty while I'm in the store, and the option to download it comes later. But whatever this looks like, it's going to be interesting from a marketing standpoint. But I think that widgets tie closely to this as well. Don't you think
Yeah.
that widgets are important?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're not talking about the watch, but like I feel like they mentioned the widgets more on the watch than they did for the phone. So I'm still kind of looking to see what that is. But the interesting thing for me was that, as an app developer now, you can create experiences that essentially can be added to the today view of the notification center. So what's interesting there is, that's one of the main areas people go to see what the heck's going on with their phone, because every app is, most of them are being, sending messages to that center. Now you can get essentially above the fold. Like the consumer could have put your app 5 screens deep, and now you have a way to just be at the front of the screen. Not all the time, because that'd be really annoying, but a way to constantly be in right in front of that person in the one place that they're probably visiting, possibly the most.
Yeah, I think that this is the kind of heralding the opening or the beginning of the notification operating system, right? And it's not about the apps as much anymore as it is about who owns that pole position in the notification center. And I think it's going to get fascinating to watch this as this rolls out.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of this becomes replicated on the other operating systems like Android, right? Because Android pioneered quite a bit of this. But now it's up to them to see to match this or surpass what Apple's doing with iOS 8.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is actually a good segue into notifications.
Yeah.
Which I think are kind of merged with this whole push action thing. You kind of leverage these push action buttons with notifications. So I think the interesting thing is now that push notifications are giving the user more control, which is obviously great. But I think it gives an opportunity now to marketers, because historically you'd get this notification and you'd say, this is annoying, and you'd swipe it away, and that was like the end of the experience. Where now there's like, you have the ability to add different buttons like remind me later and things like that, or save to, if it's a coupon, like save to passbook or something that over time, the apps that are triggering these notifications can be collecting data as to, okay, well, if people are always saying, read this later for this coupon, like they're gonna, and then they start seeing when they are actually read, they're going to be able to be more intelligent about when is the right time to send messages, right? So like message delivery is going to be super interesting. And then on top of that, these push button actions or push action buttons can now deep link you into apps and even other websites and stuff like that can start creating these like choose your own adventure experiences. So it's like you can choose one or two paths and then, not just be like, oh, we can really only take you to one of them. Now it's like, boom, you can start sending people in more relevant paths that could be, more optimal for conversion down the line, or just a much better way to acquire more data about the behaviors of these specific app users. So I thought that was a huge win, and something you should link to in the resources of this episode is Urban Airship created for everyone that doesn't know, Urban Airship is a large provider of push notifications within apps. They created like a guide, sort of like, here are all the cool things that you could do with these push action buttons. To kind of get people's minds rolling with this. So I just started diving into that. It's got some pretty cool stuff. But I think that's going to be pretty big too, from apps being able to, or businesses being able to actually give the user a better experience while also still benefiting from using push notifications.
I think that it's so key, and we started to see this roll out in the US and in Canada, which is Twitter's buy button, right? So Twitter becoming the classified section for of the internet, going from the nervous system of the internet to the classified section of the internet. I don't know if that's a great move, but you can start to see the way that they think about buy, right? So if you, for example, were on, I don't know, Urban Outfitters Twitter account and you put that as a push notification for notification around a product, you could see those notifications being buy now, right? At some point, buy now through Apple Pay, pay for the product right from a notification on your screen, which I think is very, very, very powerful ultimately at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I don't know why I thought about Urban Outfitters. I'm not. Urban Airship probably is. So is that it? Those are the
That's
big
all
things.
I got.
Yeah. Like, and you got to start to think is that we haven't touched on the Apple Watch and the way that it does payments and the way that it interacts with the devices. We haven't talked about the fact that they're doing a Snapchat like
Another episode.
Yeah, a Snapchat everything and temporary images and photos and videos and how you can leverage those. So we'll be back obviously as these things roll out. This has been the Mobile Hour, the Mobile Marketing Hour. Thank you guys.
Marketing, 25 minutes.
Exactly. It's that important. We didn't want to break it up into 25 episodes. We'll see you next time for the next episode of the Mobile Marketing Minute. See you, Greg.
Take care.
Don't forget to come back next week for our next episode.